we start, Natalie, we are gonna allow like 2 to 3 more minutes for everybody to join, and then we are going to start. In the meantime, please feel free to use the chat to put your name, where you're connecting from, so we can get like a sense of the audience that we have today. And again, we're gonna allow like 2 more minutes to people to join, and we are gonna start right away. Okay. So I see people logging in. So again, hi everyone. Welcome to becoming a homeowner webinar. And please feel free to put your name and where you're connecting from in the chat. And we are going to start in a minute. Awesome. Hi, Karina. Thank you for joining.
Figured I'd share where I'm joining in from too.
Perfect. Yeah, I see some people in the chat from Salem, Lawrence, Everett. I'm joining from Somerville, Massachusetts.
I'm joining from Methuen, Massachusetts.
Awesome. So we're all over the state.
We're a North Shore group. I love it.
Perfect. So I think we can start. So again, I want to welcome everyone to our event today, Becoming a Homeowner. My name is Natalie Calabrasimo. I'm the director of the Financial Literacy Committee at Alpha Boston. I'm really happy to have you here. We're going to be discussing a topic that is pretty interesting, and we have 2 amazing speakers today joining us. So right before we get started, I'm just going to go pretty quick over the agenda for today. So we're going to start with some opening remarks. Then we're going to have the speakers giving the introduction so you know who they are and what's their expertise. And then they're going to be tackling into the top 3 ways to prepare for your home purchase. And then they're going to dig deeper into like certain topics. And at the end, we're going to allow like enough time for Q&A. So please feel free to either write your questions, with like a pen and paper, and then you put in the chat, or write in the chat as soon as you have them so you don't forget about them. Because the idea with this event today is that you come out of here with like, your mind clear, like with a really good understanding on the home buying process. So please feel free to make as many questions as possible today. So right to start, I just want to introduce for the ones who are not aware of Alpha. Alpha is the Association for Latino Professionals for America. We're the oldest Latino professional organization in the United States. The Alpha Boston chapter was established in 2000, and our mission is to provide opportunities for leadership development, community engagement, and networking for the Latinx community in the greater Boston area. And basically help propel their careers and their livelihood. So again, this is an event from the Committee of Financial Literacy. Our mission is just to provide as much knowledge as we can to our Latino community so they can make better informed decisions regarding their financials. So please feel free to join us in our upcoming events. Stay tuned with us also on social media. And if you want to be part of Alpha and be involved, please feel free to reach out to us. We're going to be sharing our social media channels as well. So you can be part not just of the Financial Literacy Committee, but of all of the committees that we have at Alpha Boston. So I just want to mention and highlight some of the upcoming events we have. We have an event coming on Saturday, July 16 at 11 a.m. in North Point Park, Yoga for Everyone. So please feel free to join. In the chat, you're going to have the link in case you want to join that event. Later this month, we also going to have Breaking into Tech. This is going to be a virtual event in July 21st at 6 p.m. So please also find the link to log in the chat. And we have the Alpha National Convention on August from August 7 to August 10 in Orlando, Florida. If you want to learn more about the convention, this is a great opportunity to network to so many things. You're going to meet so many nice people there, and just to network, so expand the network nationally. So you will have the link as well in our chat. So without taking any further time from you, I'm just going to pass it over to one of our speakers, Mina. So please take it over.
Awesome. Thank you so much. My name is Mina Sharma. I am a real estate agent and investor. I work for a company called eXp Realty. I'm based out of Everett, Massachusetts. And in my other job, I'm also the Chief Relationship Officer for Alpha Boston. So I manage our corporate and community partnerships and relationships that make Alpha what it is. And I'm super excited to have one of our partners bring on their speaker, who you will hear from me right after. But I've been in real estate since early 2020. I've always been interested for a very, very long time. But I pursued it full time right at the start of COVID, when I couldn't actually practice real estate. But coming out of the pandemic over the last 2 years, I've worked on every different type of transaction you can think of, helping first-time home buyers, helping experienced home buyers, selling homes. And the area that I want to specialize in kind of moving forward is with investors and first-time home buyers. I think they're two very specific niche markets, but I love it. I work in the greater Boston area and around anywhere in Massachusetts. I'll go wherever my clients need me to go. And prior to that, I used to work in financial services and accounting and tax. So a lot of that accounting numbers mindset when it comes to buying a house is extremely important. It's a super exciting process. It's a lot of fun and exciting. But if you've got all your money matters managed and taken care of, you can truly enjoy the experience, because a lot of times when you get stressed out, it's the numbers, it's the money part, it's the payment, it's the interest, which our awesome lender is going to share with us kind of how to navigate that process. But I really put a big emphasis on getting all of that ironed out before we start looking at homes and get to the good parts. So I'll pass it over to Rachel to share a little bit about herself.
Hello, my name is Rachel Concepcion. I work for Eastern Bank. I am a mortgage loan officer. Before that, I worked in retail. I was a branch manager for many years and decided to go into the mortgage side of banking right near the pandemic also. So that was a really interesting time. I'm very involved in my community, worked in BNI groups, on boards, and I really like that I moved into the mortgage lending department, because it's really good to help someone meet one of their financial goals. So
can we get the next slide? So there's a lot we can talk about home ownership, and no matter where you are in the process, whether you're 6 months or 6 years or 6 days away from like, I'm ready to do this, there's certain things that you should be doing to prepare regardless of whenever you do it. And this is ongoing stuff. And we can always dive into big details, but we decided to focus on kind of the 3 big areas and cover that. And we'll start with meeting with a lender. Oftentimes people are like, the first step is to go look at a house and see it. That's great, but do you know your budget? Do you know what you can afford? Do you know what you want to spend? As technical as those things are, they do take a little bit of the fun of it. Sorry, Rachel. But they're extremely important things to get ironed down so that you're comfortable, confident in making the purchase. So I'll let Rachel start with kind of the lending process and what that conversation is about. Not so much the specifics, but what you should know and be prepared for and open to discuss when you have this conversation.
So starting the process of buying a home, one of the first things that whatever real estate agent that you're working with is going to want you to do is get a pre-approval letter. And what a pre-approval letter does is, as a lender, I'm going to look at your whole financial situation to see how much you can actually afford for a home. So the first thing I would start with is, as a consumer, you have a right to shop for the best lender for you. So I do suggest that when you decide, yes, I'm ready, that you at least shop around to 3 3 financial places. It could be 2 banks, a credit union, but shop around. Know that as a consumer, we're going to pull your credit. But if you're doing your inquiries within the 30 days, it does not affect your credit as you think it would. Your score is not going to keep going down. So you, within a 30-day period, have, as a consumer, the right to shop around. So I would do that. And when you decide that you're going to start looking for a lender, make sure you do it within that 30-day time frame so that your credit is not affected with inquiries. The second thing we're going to look at, once you decide who you're going to go with, we're going to look at your credit. We're going to pull your credit. We're going to see what you have outstanding for debt. If you have student loans, car payments, if you had any collections in the past, and how you've been paying your credit. What I do suggest is write down everything that you have for credit cards, and see, what you can pay off so that you put yourself in the best financial situation for you. You're saving your money, you have bills that are coming in. Sometimes, you have these credit cards that you only may have like $100 on, 200, making sure that you have that at a zero balance so that me as a lender doesn't have to put that as one of your debts, which is going to lower how much you can actually qualify for a home. We have your DTI, your debt to income ratio. And basically what that is what you make a month from your job salary versus what you're paying out in bills. And what we're looking at is, what's your mortgage payment going to be if you purchase a house for $400,000? You have your homeowner's insurance in there. You have your, if you're not putting 20% down, your primary mortgage insurance. How much is your car payment and all your other credit card debt? So that's what your debt to income ratio is. How much you have coming into your home at the end of every month, income-wise, versus what you're paying out. And banks usually like to see you around 43%. That is a strong buyer. If your debt to income ratio is at about 43%, it shows that you're responsible and that you can afford the home that you're trying to go into. Another thing that you need to look at is your income versus doing a budget. You have your bills that you're paying, your light, your gas. Those are things that are non-negotiable. You have to pay them. So make sure, putting those and budgeting for that, and then budgeting for other things like you have your credit card payments, you have your, the car payment, budgeting. When I was going to buy a home many moons ago, it was budgeting right down to, all right, this is how much I'm allowed to spend on going out and spending money to eat, because I love to go out to eat, and sticking to that budget and making sure that I'm saving my money so that I can put it towards the purchase that I really wanted to accomplish, which was buying my home. So it's really important that if you could sit down and budget and save so that you're prepared for the purchase that you're about to make. And then the other thing that you need to look at is interest rates. Interest rates can fluctuate. If in the bank where I work at, we have a portfolio loan. Interest rates are, pretty decent. And, other times that with other programs, there's different programs that you can go into as a first-time home buyer that have different interest rates. So you want to make sure that you're getting into an interest rate that is, I don't want to say comfortable for you, but that makes sense for the transaction that you're purchasing, because you want to make sure it all adds to it. Your interest rate, how much you're paying for the home, your down payment, you're going to have closing costs. So interest rates pretty much determine what your payment is going to look like month to month. And that's why it's important to shop around, because, one bank could be charging 1/8% lower, which could affect your payment. So interest rates right now are up from what they were in the past. But in reality, when you look over it statistically, we're still in a good range. And I tell my customers, interest rates are what they are. What's important is that you can afford the home at that interest rate and that you're going to be comfortable with your payments every month and that you're not going to be struggling to make those payments. So.
Yeah, no, and just touching on interest rates, we'll kind of dive into a little bit. What I'm going to talk about is the market that over the last 2 years, anyone and everyone's like, oh, how's the market? What's the market? Like, who's buying a house? What are you buying? Like, it's been such a hot topic. And I can't emphasize enough that all of these things are super, super important, interest rate, timing, and everything. But I think peeling it back is the right time to buy is when you're actually ready. So I'm actually going to focus on those two areas. The stuff that apparently I can't number things either, but everything is number one. They're all equally important. I couldn't stop looking at it because I'm type A like that, so I apologize. But it's you'd have to prepare for that whenever you're ready. It's so important to do a quick health check to say, this is where I'm now. This is what I can afford today. What does that get me? Go look at Zillow or just see what's out there. And then talk to that lender and say, what can I do strategically to put me in a position of, I want to buy a single family house in Methuen, because there's a bunch of you from there apparently, at this price point and this many bedrooms. What do I need to do, right? Paying off all debt isn't always the answer. Sometimes it's a certain type of debt that you need to pay off that'll put you in a better ratio. Working on your credit is never a bad idea. So I'm not even going to go there on that one. Just there's always things you can do. But the reason we put this here is you're getting financially undressed is like the most inappropriate way to put it. But you're going to share everything with this person. So find someone that you're comfortable with, that you can laugh with, because it will get uncomfortable. They'll ask you questions that dig deep into your financial spending or habits or things like that. So it's as much as just a numbers conversation. Go to someone you can open up to. Sometimes that's your uncle. Sometimes that's not your uncle. It's somebody completely outside of the family circle, and that's okay too. But kind of do that. And like Rachel was saying, talk to a couple of different people, have that conversation, get the personality fit. And then we're all going to ask you the same questions, equally prying, equally, curious, because we need to know these things so we can give you the best possible advice. That's all. Rachel, you look like you were going to say something.
Yes. And then just as a side note, everyone can request their credit report once a year. So you can write to the credit bureaus and they will give you your credit report, and you can go through your credit report line by line. Some credit card companies even have free credit monitoring on your credit, and they'll give you a quick synopsis of what you have outstanding so that you can work on, all right, this credit card's only, not only, but it's $2,000, and you could start chipping away at those things to help you prepare for the purchase of your home. Because you may not be ready right at this second, but you want to be ready in a year. So you could be saving and chipping away at those credit card debts so that you are cutting down on your debt to income so that you can possibly afford a little bit more on your home, or not even if you don't want to afford a little bit more of a home, be a little bit more comfortable because you won't have that financial burden on you any longer.
Agreed. I can't tell you how many times a husband and a wife or a wife and a wife look at each other going, your credit has what now on it? And there's always one with the spectacular credit and someone that's like, I'm working on it. Talk about this stuff, right? Whether you're buying with a spouse or with a friend or with someone, like, you need to be open and honest about this stuff because it all shows up. And credit will impact your score, especially in the environment that we're in where the numbers just keep going up. That little difference of that 750 versus 685 or whatever. I'm not the most
person. It makes a difference in the interest.
It does. And it's silly because you look at it and you're like, you look at what caused it. And it's like 6 years ago, that one payment you missed by 2 days. I know which one I missed 7.5 years ago.
Yeah.
It finally got wiped off, which I'm really excited about. But those things matter and no one talks about that. And you don't even have to buy it, whether you're at any point, these are critical things. So we really wanted to put a heavy emphasis on checking all this stuff out and then having this conversation. We'll do a quick pulse check or pause for any questions or comments before I dive into the funner stuff, I'll call it.
Not fair.
Sorry, subtle. Hey, we appreciate you guys. The lenders do a lot of the tough talking and conversations for us to make sure that you're ready to actually have fun. Does anyone have questions or anything they want to throw in the chat? Otherwise, I'll hop right on to my part. I don't know if I cannot see the chat or there is no questions, which is okay. So I'll cover into kind of what are you looking to buy? So one of the first conversations that I have with anyone buying is, what are you trying to buy? Who are you buying it with and why? Everyone has a different incentive in what they're purchasing, whether that's a single family home, a multifamily home, you're just by yourself. I bought a condo recently, and so that made so much more sense for me than a single family home. And whatever that purchase is like, it is taking the time to figure out what your motivation and incentive are. One of the things that happened during COVID was the rates just fell to like ridiculously lows. I've not been in it long enough to know, but all I can tell you is that it was chaos. There was people who weren't even ready to buy. We're just like, you know what? I'm just going to buy because I'm there. And it created a lot of this. Everybody was buying something. Some people were ready, some weren't. And you really want to dig into why it's important to you. And I'll talk about timing as well. But it really is that financial preparedness. And then that, yes, I'm actually ready to move into a place where I'm responsible for everything. I'm no longer calling a landlord, no longer calling my parents for something. It's me. And I think there's a big personal, emotional aspect of it that goes into that. And so when you're ready with the money part, it's what are you buying and with who? Is it a partner? Is it a family member? Are you co-purchasing together? Who makes decisions? Is an uncle going to advise on it? There's a big thing in the real estate community of like dads blow up deals, which is somewhat accurate because they're always looking out for you. But it's so important to sit down and say, what am I really trying to do? What is my goal? What is my purpose? And who's involved with it? Okay. Sorry, I got distracted by the comments. And to think about those things and share that with your agent. So whether you're agent shopping or lender shopping, it's, to me, I always tell people you have to be comfortable to say what you need to say. This isn't a purchase you can go return later. It's an expensive refund. So you want to make sure you're working with people that you walk to the front of the house and go, I don't even want to go in. I don't like the street. Great. Let's keep going to the next place. And I've had all of these experiences where you're like, I kind of like the area, but I don't like this, or I like that, or I love everything. I just don't, I'm not feeling it. I believe in good juju and bad juju when it comes to buying. And I've had people walk into gorgeous homes and I'm not here for it. So the point here is be comfortable with who you're working with, whether that's someone you know or someone you don't know, and stick with them. Trust them, take their advice, take the time to ask the questions, and whatever you're uncomfortable about, whatever your question is, whatever somebody outside is advising you, bring them into the conversation. Don't hold back because it prevents us from doing our job properly and appropriately for you. I can't give you the best advice if I don't know what's bothering you. And so that's super important when choosing who you work with. And then the type of home. If your criteria is I'm open to everything, you're going to get nothing, because you're going to look at everything, get emotionally and mentally exhausted at this option and that option. So pick a style or type of home that you're looking in, define kind of a zone neighborhood, figure out what your non-negotiables are. I need to have a pool. I don't need to have a pool. It's got to be past, brand new construction. I want X, Y, and Z. This is my non-negotiable. This is my negotiable list. And talk through all of those little things. Go browse open houses. Once you've kind of got a high budget, go look at what you're interested in, what you like, what you don't like, what's a deal breaker, areas you absolutely want to stay away from for whatever reason, or areas you really want to be in because that's where something is or work is or your friends or family are. Those criterias and setting them helps you hone in on what you're interested in, because we live in like a housing market, I'll call it, where something's popping up on Zillow, it's on Redfin, it's on Realtor, there's for sale by owner things. There's so much to look at. There's so much information that it's equally easy to get distracted. So having kind of that strategy set of what you want, where I want it, how I want it, what my budget is, This is how much I'm going to spend. Anything above this is just not going to work because I'm not comfortable with it. Will make your home buying process so much more enjoyable because you're looking at stuff you might actually put an offer on. You might actually move forward with and make a purchase. And I promise I'm sharing these things and tips because these are all the reasons that people get frustrated with buying a house. Does anyone know that's bought a house in the last 2 years? Anyone have a friend or a family, or did anyone here in this chat buy a house over the last couple of years during COVID? How's their emotional health doing? It's exhausting. Give them a hug. It is not easy on anybody involved, and it's frustrating. So simplifying some of that stuff for yourself and for your own sanity and whoever you're buying with makes it so much easier. I think a couple people said yes. So a lot of these are just tips to just mitigate the garbage in the market. So that's kind of a little bit about what type of purchase you're making, why you're making it. If you're purchasing with family, discuss what the triggers are. How do we decision make? How do we decide? I work with a lot of families that'll buy a multifamily together. I've purchased with family. We have clear roles and responsibilities on who does what we look at, and having those conversations with your agent so that they can also make sure that whoever is a decision maker, whoever needs to be part of the conversation is part of it. Any questions or thoughts or initial reactions from anyone?
I seen a question on the bottom that it was flashing quickly about what I think it said, what was the best way to get your credit?
Typically, if you're single, I'd say it depends on what's on your credit. If it's the length, or actually, I'll let you go for it. I was going to say there's a couple of different things, but it's case by case on what might be the best thing for you, might not be the most appropriate for somebody else. Rachel, I don't know if you want to also.
Yes. So the best way to look at your credit is see what you have outstanding. If you're in the case that you have student loans, your student loans are your student loans. Those lenders know that those are lengthy commitments that you're going to have. So we kind of put that into a separate bucket. What we're really looking at is your revolving debt, your credit cards, your Discovers, Capital One, those type of credit cards, and how you're using them. And those are the credit cards that if you have large balances that you're going to want to start chipping away at, so that you're able to put your credit cards in order. Another thing that we look at is car payments. You may decide, all right, I'm going to pay this car off so that I don't have this on my debt anymore. So there's different ways of doing it, but whatever lender you pick will help break that down for you to find the best path for you to bring down that debt. And even if you're not buying right away, your lender who you're working with should be open to, okay, you're not ready right now, but let's put you in a good position so that you can be ready in 6 months, or if you want to buy in a year. And if you follow these steps, I guarantee you're going to be ready.
Yeah. And the other thing I'd say is shy away or stay away from internet lenders. I'm sure they're phenomenal. There are good cases and stories, but real estate and buying a home is still a people person thing. Having someone you can call to and ask questions and talk to that's local in your market, that understands what Massachusetts buying is like versus Idaho, makes a difference. So kind of factor that into your experience as well, and keep that in mind. But I have another question about what to consider when you're buying a multifamily house. So a couple of things. Oh, go ahead, Rachel.
No, you can go.
I didn't know if you were going to say anything.
Mm-hmm.
When buying a multifamily house, so one, it's a totally different type of loan, different criteria is looked at. But I think the bigger question is, what's your motivation? Are you looking to purchase it and stay there? Or are you looking to live there for a little bit and then rent it out? And so the way that I look at any multi, because I also invest in multi, is will it carry itself? It's very much a numbers decision in my mind. This is where it's at now. These are the current rents. I might have to spend X, Y, and Z to get this rent. Does it carry itself? And what that means is, can it pay for its mortgage, all the utilities, whatever expense is related to purchasing this property, will the rent cover everything and make me a little bit of profit? I can tell you that every time I've lost an offer to a multifamily was to somebody who was going to live there. So they had a different motivation. They were willing to pay for more to say, okay, well, normally this would net me $1,000 a month in profit. But someone who's going to live there and call it their home probably doesn't care about that $1,000 right now or as much. They're willing to pay more for that same exact house. So the question is it an investment or is it going to be your home? And that'll dictate what you're like, how much you're willing to pay for something.
And then on the lending side, the criteria for multifamily and a single family are different in the way that your lender, because it's a multifamily and you're going to have renters, and if you get a renter in there that's not paying the rent, you are responsible for that other portion. So your lender may require a certain amount of reserves, and it could be anywhere from 3 months to 6 months. And what reserves are your mortgage payments. A lender may ask you to have 3 months worth of mortgage payments or 6 months worth of mortgage payments, just in case if something happens with the home, you have the backup to be able to make those mortgage payments. They'll look at your 401k to satisfy that requirement, or an IRA, but they will ask for some type of reserve. Just because it's a riskier deal, because you're relying on someone else to make their rental payments to pay your mortgage.
Yep. And then usually if it's strictly an investment, not I'm going to live in one and rent the other, it's a little bit different. If it's purely an investment, you usually have to do 20, sometimes 30% down, because 25. Okay. I've had to do 35 on some of them just because the rents were a little lower.
Yeah, it differs by lender.
Yes, it varies. And it varies by property too. Like in one of the deals that we recently, actually it was like a year and a half ago, the rents weren't as high. So the profit was kind of tight. So we had to put more down so that in between we had more of a gap. So if someone missed a payment or something, I'm not like, oh my God, this is coming out of pocket. And so that percentage at minimum is 20, sometimes it's 25, whatever they need to get comfort to say, you need to put this much skin in the game and we'll put this much to match you. And they vet the numbers, right? It's not like, oh yeah, okay, buy a house, do whatever. They're looking at the rent roll. They're looking at your expenses. They're looking to make sure that we're looking at everything and kind of giving you that second pair of eyes. But definitely working with someone that does investment properties or has them certainly helps, because they can offer you their opinion on what rent this should be versus what it is and help you do that analysis. And I'm happy to share kind of my little calculator or calculation that I do like at a quick glance to see if it's even worth going to look at. In the beginning, I used to go look at everything.
And as a bank, when you are going to buy that house, we're doing an appraisal, and at the time of the appraisal, we're asking the appraiser to also give us what the market rental is for that area. So it's not like a number that we pick out. Oh yeah, that looks like it's worth 2,000. There's actually work that goes into it that says in this area for these amount of bedrooms, this is the fetching rental price, and it could, they'll do like 1,800 or 2,000 or whatever it is for that area, because each area has a different rental market.
Yeah, absolutely. And it literally varies from one city to the next. I use a couple of different scales to kind of gauge if an average is X, Y, and Z, because I also help do rentals for any of my clients who own multis as a way to just kind of keep fresh on current rents. Any other questions? And then we'll dive into the market and talk a little bit about what it was, what everyone probably heard, because I swear before 2020, no one talked about real estate the way that we do now. Okay, I don't see any other questions, so I'll go into it. What's the market like now versus pre-2020 versus during COVID? I'm going to call it, even though we're still kind of in COVID era. I think before COVID, it was a normal market. What happened during COVID was because the rates were down, the prices they were normal prices until buying a really big house got really cheap, or cheaper than normal. And so by a way of it being cheaper, people just started bidding crazy numbers, because it was such a low interest on buying such a big house that you were able to afford more. And so that drove up prices like crazy. And where we're at now is that the house prices are still there. They're not like sky falling. I know everyone wants to talk about the market crashing and prices going down. That may happen like at a national level holistically, but in Massachusetts, we're kind of not the same as everybody else. We're thankfully a very steady, strong market. We're not going to hope we don't see things plummet anywhere. Actually, that's good for nobody. But in general, our prices aren't dropping like crazy. What is happening though is as the interest rates go up, the prices are still where they are because they were driven up by a high interest rate. So a house that was worth a $600,000 house versus an $800,000 house, you're getting less house for more money. Your rate is higher, your prices are probably about the same. You're not in bidding wars, but what you got 2 years ago or a year ago at the same price, you're getting less house, probably not as nice or, smaller. So your money is worth less. So in a weird way, we're not worthless, worth less than what it was. And so in a weird way, the rates going up are not a good thing, but they're also not a horrible thing because it's stopping the prices from just blowing up and becoming extremely ridiculous, because at some point it really wasn't making sense. And I'm the type of agent that will be like, do you want me to tell you when you're doing something crazy? Because I think that's I love this house, I'm willing to pay this much, let's go for it, versus that's actually a really ridiculous price for what you're buying, maybe reconsider it. And so I think now we're getting into somewhat, I hope, a healthier balance of the rates are higher than they were. They're not high overall. And if you rate shop and talk to people and have conversations, tell people you're buying a house. Everybody will throw a recommendation at you. Have conversations so that you get the best possible rate that you can for what you're looking to do. And my advice on a lot of people have backed out. So with the rates going up, people are pulling away. There's a general sense of like, oh, I don't know what's going to happen. I will still stick to the advice I gave someone when the rates were 2% versus 6%. The right time to buy is when you're actually ready, when you're financially ready in a position, when you've decided that you no longer wish to pay rent, you are in a place where you want to be more responsible about where you live and what you do. When you're actually ready financially and mentally is the right time to buy. The rates will do this for the rest of our lives. No one thinks about selling a house as the market, a seller's market or a buyer's market. When something happens, they got to sell, you got to sell. That's their timing, right? So run on your own time. Try not to get impacted by everything you see on social media where people are buying or doing this or doing that. Really make it about you, about your money, because at the end of the day, you pay your mortgage, you pay your bills. So if you're good and ready to go, whether it's at 8% or 4%, do it. If it feels right to you, do it. I'm upping my investing out of state. I know where the rates are going. I'm not thrilled about it, but that's not going to stop me, because if the numbers make sense and it carries itself, I'm sure the rates will fall at some point and I'll refinance then. So don't let interest rates or the looming fear or the things that people are saying impact you. If you are prepared and it feels right, go for it.
Yeah, that's a great point. I always tell people, you're not buying a product, you're buying a home. And as long as you can afford that home,
Yep.
Everything else is kind of fluff. So we just need to make sure that we get you ready, or that
Yep.
you get yourself ready to be in the position to buy. And, interest rates are what we don't change the interest rates. We have no control over them. You just need to make sure that you can financially support it. And if rates ever start to fall again, like Nina said, then you refinance and then you save some money at that point.
Yeah. So if it works now, it'll work later. And by the love of life and inflation or whatever you want to call it, it'll always be worth more down the road at some point. And so it's never a bad time to start putting that money into equity. I don't believe in rent is like flushing it down the toilet and all those ridiculous memes. I think we are where we are in life, and as you progress, you do different things. But it is nice to watch your money grow into something and become part of your home versus just the abyss. So I guess with that, we'll open it up to questions. You guys can ask us questions about what we do, our market, anything we can deep dive into a little bit more. I think we have some time, about 20 minutes or so. So the first, oh, okay. So I'd say the first step is whether you talk to an agent or a lender, will probably kick you back to one or the other, but talk to somebody about it. Say it out loud. Talk to someone who's recently purchased. And then if you know an agent that you trust, whether it's a friend or someone you've seen in your market that's all over the place, talk to one of them and they'll guide you to speaking to a lender first if you're really ready to go. If you're preparing for it, they should still say, hey, have a casual conversation with the lender. Here's my income. Here's roughly where I'm at. Ballpark it, right? You don't want to just not do anything about it and start looking at houses. I definitely advise getting your money mind right, so that you know that you're setting yourself up appropriately. And then another question is raising your income the only way to increase your pre-approval amount?
No. You can increase your pre-approval amount by paying down your debt if you have a lot of it. That's another way to increase your pre-approval limit.
Yeah.
Because increasing your debt, increasing your income, you can always go and look for another job, but the way to do it is to really take a look at your credit, see what's on there, and if there's anything that you can pay off, pay it off.
Perfect. And then we have another question. I actually like that. I never think about paying down debt. Everyone always assumes like increase your income. But that's a really, really good tip. I'm gonna write that down to remember myself. We can all use that.
Not harder.
There you go. And be strategic with it, right? Talk to someone on what debt to pay off, but in general, paying any of it off helps. And then when looking at potential rental homes, what numbers do you look at to quickly check if something is a good deal and worth doing a deeper dive? There is this thing, I assume the question is towards investment properties. I'm going to go ahead and say you want to look at what the total rent is. If it exceeds 1% of purchase price, that's a good deal. So if you're bringing in $1,000 a month and the property is worth $100,000, you're not getting that in Mass, first of all. But anywhere else, that 1% rule of calculation generally means, this is not a surefire, that it will carry itself. What your profit is in between is totally separate. And that's a whole conversation. If you guys want to have, please let me know. I'd love to talk about investment properties and those calculations. But at a quick glance, you can do that and say, will it carry itself? Yay or nay? Is it even worth looking? And then the second check would just be, are those market rents or are those just landlords that never change their rents and it's 20 years old and you're paying $1,000 for a 2-bed and it's really worth $2,500? I think those two quick checks are really an easy way to kind of yay or nay something on whether it's even worth looking at. That I hope that answered the question. Victor, let me know if you want me to dive into that a little bit more. And then we have another question. Is the pre-approval step the first thing you need to do before shopping for a house? I would say yes. I have at least the initial conversation and then browse open houses. Rachel, I don't know if you want to add to that or just chime in a little bit more, but I would say generally that's the first place to start.
My experiences in this market now, most real estate agents want to know that you've talked to a lender and that someone took a look at your credit report and that you're good to go. Because if you're just out there looking at homes and you don't have a realistic idea of what you can afford, why fall in love with a house that you can't buy? So it's always good to know what your budget is, what you qualify for, so that you stay in that price range, and you're not setting yourself up for heartbreak, because sometimes you get really emotionally attached to something.
Right. And the other thing I'd say is if you're casually browsing, be open about casually browsing. There's nothing quite worse than someone who will go look and look and look and is just totally not ready to buy. Be open with your intent. No one's going to not work with you or not build a relationship with you, but as an agent working in the space, it helps to know that, hey, you're browsing, figuring it out versus I'm browsing and I am ready to go. I think that allows us to make sure that we're not over pressuring you, because sometimes there's people that are very aggressive And if you're clear about where you are, it makes your life easier and it makes our life easier. I had to share the agent perspective. I'm sorry. But you don't want to also be hounded by anyone that thinks you're ready when you're not, and you're just figuring things out. But talk to the lender. Even, I think there's another question about how long does it last? I think typically it's 90 days. In the environment where you're ready to go and you're shopping now, you for sure want to talk to your lender before the weekend starts and get a refresh. Because sometimes your budget will change. I think Rachel was saying it changed a couple of times just this week, and it's Tuesday.
Yeah.
So
Your pre-approval is good for 30 days because once we pull your credit is only good for 30 days. So that's why when we pull your credit and your pre-approval letter, they go together because credit's only good for 90 days. I'm sorry.
yeah,
3 months, 90 days. So, I always ask my customers, are you ready to look right now? Because I don't want to pull your credit and you're not going to look for 6 months. This is only good for 3 months. Let's speak again in 3 months.
yeah. And the other thing you can do is when you're having these preliminary conversations, go into the discussion a little bit informed. So earlier I had shared Experian.com. I'm not like it's a surefire of getting your credit as like a hard pull, but you can go and look for yourself and for free, don't pay the $15 a month. Like monitor your credit, your activity, your debt, like keep an eye on that stuff so that when you talk to someone, you're like, hey, I'm not ready, don't pull my credit. But roughly it's around this much. Give them an idea of where you are and be informed yourself. Don't let your lender tell you your credit has this issue and that issue. That's not, I mean, it happens, but the more prepared and in line and more paying attention you are to your things, the better it is for you, because you should be an informed buyer. You never fully want to like just be blindsided with information. So do your own research and kind of look at that stuff as well. What else? Pre-approval does pull your credit. So kind of and that's why we're saying time it accordingly, but keep an eye on that stuff as yourself as well. If you don't want someone to pull it, you kind of know where you stand with things, so you can share that with them. We have another question. In your opinion, do FHA buyers still have a chance to get offers accepted? A lot of sellers stay away from FHA buyers from what I've seen. Yes and no. I had a lot of FHA buyers last year with good strategy and being very quick and diligent. We've certainly gotten offers accepted. The hesitation usually comes from the fact that an FHA home inspection looks at a lot more, not even a lot more. I don't think they look at anything unreasonable, truthfully, but they look at more things than a traditional conventional loan. And I'll let Rachel share anything kind of on that front, but no, I don't think it's less likely. It can be tougher when you're in a competitive situation with someone who's putting 20% down versus 3 to 5%. It's not necessarily a question of FHA versus the conventional loan. Sometimes it's just the security of the buyer. You're putting more money down, you have more skin in the game, and it's generally the perception is that is a stronger buyer. And so that's probably the bias. But I think if you're strategic about, look at houses that have been on the market for a couple of weeks or something, kind of get creative with it. But it is a little bit harder, but not impossible, I'll say.
I want to start off with FHA is a great product. And especially if you want to buy a multifamily and you're going to be owner occupied, it is one of the products that you can get in there with a low down payment. So it may be a little bit harder to get your offer accepted. At least that's what I'm hearing from realtors and buyers. But I think it's more along the lines of what Mina was saying. Conventional loans are 20% down, and they don't look as much things like it for FHA. If there's peeling paint and it's noted, it needs to be scraped and repaired, and some sellers are just not willing to do that. So you just have to make sure that you're picking the right homes. And I've done a lot of FHA loans. It's a great product. You just have to find the right home for you and the seller that's willing to work with you.
Absolutely. And then we had one more question on the average interest rate for a mortgage right now versus before the pandemic. So I guess we'll do end of 2019 for date purposes.
So in 2019, you could get rates in the twos, threes. And right now, rates, depending what product you go into, you can, if you go into a portfolio loan, I'm talking about my bank, these are the only rates that I know. They're in the fours, depending on what product you're using, or if you're willing to go into a 10-1 ARM versus a 30-year fixed. So the rates are higher right now. But if you look over a 20-year span, interest rates are still good. I think we got really spoiled with the 2 to 3%, that now that we see you're getting, a 4%, 5, sometimes 6%, when you were like, oh my God, rates are so high. If you do your homework, you will see that statistically, over the years, interest rates are still great.
Yep. It's kind of like working from home during COVID. I mean, it sounds cool, but like, let's get back to post-COVID life, which means let's get out there and start. It wasn't going to last forever. It was
Right.
just to be sure that we didn't all fall apart while we stayed at home. I'm thankful for that. I'm sure a lot of people are. I think it kept a lot of things going. But like we said, you're not buying a product, you're buying your home. And even when you're buying an investment property, you're buying so much more than that, right? The appreciation, the opportunity to create wealth and kind of keep that going. It's so much more than just, oh, the interest rate went up a percentage. Sometimes it's still a really, really good deal. Do it. There are people who don't care that it'll go up to 10%. I plan to be one of those people. I mean, 10% sounds crazy, even as I say it out loud, but my goal is so much bigger than the interest rate that is coming up in the next 12 to 18 months. So that is literally not going to change. I might, be a little hesitant the entire time through, but I know that there's a much bigger vision and picture to it. And so you have to keep that in mind when you're making kind of the immediate short-term decision. I have to ask, is anyone looking or processing? And the reason I'm asking this, because I just want to throw a few tips. By all means, if you love your agent, stay with them. Tell them you love them because it helps. But the two things I'll say to anyone looking for anything right now or in general, to always look on like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. That's when the new stuff comes out. We're all very strategic about that. Anything you look at on Monday, Tuesday, and you're calling someone or looking for something, 9 out of 10 times, that's when offers are due. Worst day to look at anything, because most often you've missed your chance to go into the house. So keep that in mind when you're searching. And then there was one other thing that I was going to say, but yes, start planning early. Just keep yourself open-minded to stuff. Go look at things if you're browsing. And the other tip that I'm going to give you, because the market is shifting a little bit, we're seeing things on market for more than 48 hours, which is great if you're buying. If something's been on there for 25, 30 days, that doesn't mean something's wrong with it. It could have been overpriced. It could have come on a shitty weekend. There's so many things that are outside forces that sometimes impact how a listing goes. And so if you're losing out on offers, or if you know someone this is happening to, go back and look at the stuff that's still out there. I've had clients score some really, really awesome deals because the perception is, oh my God, it's been on for 2 weeks. What's wrong with it? My client got a house $100,000 cheaper. And the reason they got it that cheap was because they had crappy photos that did no justice to the house. They held no open houses. And there's one other thing. Just they put it on a weekend where there was like 75 other houses and just it didn't show well. And so we just happened to be looking in the price range, and that house is worth $100,000 more right off the bat because somebody didn't do their part in marketing it right. I'm not complaining. My clients got a spectacular deal. They love their home. But give those homes that aren't showing well or been sitting around a shot. You'd be surprised. Some really good stuff that you'll find. It's kind of like shopping at TJ Maxx. Love TJ Maxx.
I see a question on there about the house is on the market, it says sold, and then it goes back onto the market a couple of weeks later. What does it mean? It could mean a couple of different things. It could mean, the buyer got cold feet and decided to back out. It could mean that they did the inspection on the house and it didn't come back, or the appraisal, and it wasn't,
Yeah.
you know, the appraisal didn't come back with the amount that they needed, because the bank won't lend on a house that's not worth what you're paying for. It could be the seller had to pull out for whatever reason. They thought they were going to move and now they're staying. It could be a couple of different reasons. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's something wrong with the house. It was just maybe the structure of the deal or something came up for the buyer seller situation.
Yeah. And we didn't go into contingencies of things like that, but sometimes people literally just change their mind. Other times there is something there. There's never one rhyme or reason why things fall apart, but look at that as an opportunity to go and see it for yourself. Sometimes it's good. Sometimes you're like, oh, okay, I see why I came back on market, but keep going, keep it moving. But definitely check it out. It's not always bad things. I've had that happen. So yeah. Any other questions or thoughts or anything, you guys? And we'll share both of our information in a follow-up email so you guys can reach out to us with questions. And then if you're interested in deep diving in any part of what we covered today, I would say let us know. If you guys want to talk more about investing or that loan type or how to look at a good deal, we're happy to kind of do more on that. I think there's one last question. Yes, I don't know if the recording is going to be shared. Don't know how to answer that one, but what are the best real estate websites recommended? I think Zillow is good. Don't look at their estimate. That thing is just an average of everything that's sold on the street. It will bias you. And I'm not saying that because I'm an agent. I love Zillow, actually. It opened up information to consumers, so it's awesome. Zillow, realtor.com, and then go on like an actual agent's website. Our stuff is usually more updated and compared to like some of the other ones. Like sometimes something will go under contract on Monday and it won't show up on Zillow on any other place for like 2 or 3 days. So to get the most accurate status of things, tap a friend or a realtor and go browse their page.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Just for the sake of time, I'll have you cut you there. But as Mina mentioned, we're going to be sending an email. So we're going to be sharing the information of the speakers. So I just want to thank you both, Mina and Rachel, for all the information you shared today. And I just want to give like a shout out to our who's a sponsor, Eastern Bank. So thank you very much for being here with us, to the speakers, and also for all the attendees, for all the questions. It was very interactive. Hopefully everybody walk away with as many new information as I'm doing. So I need just to process everything that I just learned in this past hour. Thank you very much. We're gonna keep in touch and then just follow us on social media to stay tuned to the next events of Alpha Blossom. So thank you very much and have a great rest of your afternoon.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.